Right, so now that I've figured out that this is kind of like my modular piece that I want to construct with, I'm going to bring this into the center, and I'm just going to give it some thickness just to help inside. Zbrush. I don't think it'll make any difference, but I just want that there. So I've got this, which will be my guide. I can get rid of the thickness, doesn't matter. So this is basically just going to be a guide for Zbrush, and I know that this is going to be essentially this bottom area here. So we're looking at like kind of maybe 1, 2, 3 bricks, some big ones, some little ones sort of mixed in. So this, I'm going to go to File and Export Selection. I'm just going to throw this on my desktop for now. Z guide or Zbrush, ZB. I'm going to open up Zbrush. Here, and then I can import the ZB guide. Okay. And then I can drag this out, and then this will be the right size for reference. Okay, so I've got that there, and I can just, oops, don't switch, and I can just actually, wrong button, W, push this back a little bit, just so it's out of the way, and then subtool, and then I'm going to append, and I'm going to bring in a polymesh, import, initialize QCube. Oops, wrong one. Initialize QCube. There we go. So now I've got this. I can start to essentially sculpt this like how I want, but I need to fit it basically within this like pack, within that kind of framework. So I can just do I can just hide this for now. I don't need this visible, and I can work with this. So I can just don't switch. And I'm just going to sort of maybe stretch this out a little bit. I've got my reference on my other screen. I'm just going to focus in on perhaps one of those bricks. So I might take a look at like this large brick I quite like. So I might look at that for now, and just kind of try and get something not exactly the same, but just something similar. So I'm just going to create that, and then I might just come in and go to my geometry. Where are you? Dynamesh. 512. Perhaps that's too high. That's because our resolution's gone up. Stretch that out a bit. What is it? That'll do. Okay, so now I've got something, and I want to work kind of, it doesn't, when I'm lining it up, I don't want perspective on. So I'm just going to leave this off for now, and then I'm just going to start working through, grab my trim dynamic and start bashing up some corners and that kind of stuff. I might want to come in and grab my snake hook and have this quite large, and then just grab this corner down a bit and start kind of manipulating the shape a bit as well, kind of here. So it's definitely kind of coming in there. Oops. Kind of cuts in. I'm going to break off all these corners a bit. And just try and sculpt in that kind of detail, so you can see kind of where we're going. I want a bit of a more flatter angle on that. So just as a quick glance, couple of seconds, we're starting to get that kind of shape that I quite like here, that kind of stone. So we can obviously build into this and keep going, and we can also sculpt on each side, so we can just build up using the same blocks. And this Trim Dynamic is a really nice brush. Oops, on one. Shift. I think I've just dynamished it again, haven't I? That's alright. I'm going to just Control D to divide it. And then high polish is quite nice because it can just really tighten up some of those areas. Get some really nice kind of faceted edges. It's just working around it. So that's just basically been using the, come on, there we go. Using the Trim Dynamic and High Polish brush, and maybe a bit of the old snake hook. We've also got Orb Extreme Polish. So this brush you can download for free if you Google Orb Zbrush brushes. Here you can download them all there for free, and then you literally just drag those into the ZBrush folder. So if I go to what is it, my PC, C drive, program files, Pixelogic, ZBrush. So in here we've got Z brushes. So inside here you can see I've just dragged in my orb brush pack, so then they are there. And to find those, if I come into my lightbox and brush, I've got my orb brush pack here. Now you can also have them install straight in here. So I've got Orb Extreme Polish here, and if you want them to appear there, and you can do this for any of these brushes, if there's some that are there that you want to bring into the main thing, you come into Z Startup and then brush presets. So you can see I've dragged that Orb Extreme Polish into there. Any of the brushes that get pulled into here will just automatically be here. So that's how you install and bring those in. So the Orb Extreme Polish, for example, will just kind of really push that back even further. I feel like that's way too strong, so I'm just going to turn that Z intensity right down but even still too strong for this particular piece. So I don't think I'm going to use that at all, but I may come in to my lightbox and use some of the others. So let's just open up those. Where have they gone? Here we go. So we've got like rock noise, old hammered, we've got cracks, we've got loads of stuff. Rock detail, which is quite good. So let me just grab that one. And if I just drag this over, it gives me some nice kind of surface detail. So I'm just going to drag this, put this all over. And I want to cut back on this as well afterwards. Let's just get some of this in. So I'm not worrying too much about making this look amazing. That's your job. I'm just showing you some of the applications that we can use. And then another thing that I quite like doing sometimes is the rock noise. Now you don't want this, you don't want to go too crazy with this because look, it's quite heavy. But what I like about this is if I do this quite heavily there or in some areas, and then we can plane it back by using our trim dynamic, you can get some nice let's reduce this, get some nice like pockets of crack details like that, which can be really, really nice. I might just increase the topology, subdivide, it's a bit low for that detail. You know, so like that, where it's kind of getting those little dinks, those little holes, which I quite like doing it. So as we go through, we're creating this rock, we're getting some nice surface detail, not too crazy. Can do that. It can bring in cracks. You've got all these kind of things. You can got these little pebbles even that you can kind of like drag out. But obviously, I don't want to do that on this particular one. But yeah, there's a load of pretty cool stuff on here. Also, when we're using like the polish, at the moment there's no alpha. Sometimes I like to bring in a square alpha, and that gives us some nice, some different kind of effects as well. Trim. There we go, get that nice chamfered off. As we kind of come through and start getting some of these kind of faceted areas, and it can kind of carve in. I'm not sure I like that bit, so I'm going to come back a little, can turn off the alpha and just use that as it was, I think, for this particular piece. I'm getting too invested, I think. So anyway, let's keep going. Another thing that I like actually is coming in and looking at the crumple. Where are you? Crumple. This can be quite nice. If I drag up and down, it will just like give me this nice crumpled kind of separation of the rock. And it can be good to break up those edges. So if we kind of do that, it's giving us this nice kind of rough crumpled paper type effect. But then when you do that and then combine it with like the trim dynamic, or let's not try that one, let's go back a few. Crumple. Maybe try polish. Just helps break up those edges so they're not quite perfectly straight, as well as giving some nice sort of other unique kind of information. So there's loads and loads of stuff that we can do and play around. What else have we got? Displays could possibly use. Flatten can be good. I can just sort of knock sort of areas out. So yeah, it's just fine. There's loads of stuff online as well, and we can use sort of the move topology. If you want to come in and oops. Large, we just want to sort of adjust some of this a little bit more and play around. Maybe it's more flat like so. I'm not looking at my reference anymore, which I should be. So let's come in there, maybe just push that down so get closer, push that back in a little bit. So we're getting something. Maybe just pull the rock face out a bit so it's a bit flatter. Same as this, it's a bit, and I might want to use a snake hook for this. To pull that out so it's a bit more concave or convex rather. And then I might go back to that move topology and then just put that back down a bit so it's more of a flatten edge rather than sticking in. That edge I'm not liking, so I'm just going to trim dynamic. And break it up. And then there's like one brick. Not sure I like this back anymore. But then you can also use some clay, or there's just standard brush to sort of bring things in. And you get these sort of happy accents, and then we've got that kind of crack coming through, which I quite like, that kind of ridge. And that there. So you can do as well the negative, so Alt would also give me a negative, so that's obviously cutting and bringing out. If I was to do high polish, And then that there, if I come into my light box and I've got all these, I might then come in and say cracks. And just kind of redefine that a little bit. Oh, that one in here. Not liking it, probably because I don't really understand how cracks work. So I'm just going to come through and just polish that out. But I do feel like this needs to be filled, so I'm just going to put a load of clay in here. I'll shift and just smooth that out a bit. Building up that clay. And then I'm going to come in and trim dynamic. And just cut that back. I feel like it needs to be a rounder shape, that's why. Remove topology, oops. I just press V then, which is just turning the lights off. Or allow me to view it in silhouette mode. I'm just going to flatten that in a little so it's not quite so sticking out. And let's have a look. Oh, flatten edges, this is a nice one. So it kind of goes over the edges quite nicely. It retains a lot as it goes over, so it tries not to break too much. Too much. So yeah, this is it. It's just experimenting and playing and seeing what works and what doesn't, and coming through and just trying to make it look like a rock. And obviously reference is always key. Let's get some old rock detail in here. Bit of rock noise. So then we've got those little pockets. Broken stuff, especially like that when it gets on the edge, I really like. So anyway, let's just leave that there for now. So we've got this one. We can bring back our subtool, this in here, and then we can just move this sort of into place. Rotate it a bit, position it down. I'm not going to be too fussed about it going over the edge, that's fine. This is just a kind of a guide. So then we've got this in place. Now for now, I'm just going to hit that little button, which then resets, oops. Reset the gizmo. click. Oop. Can't remember what button it is now to reset the gizmo only. There you go. Alt click resets that gizmo so orientation is fine. So then I've got that, and then I would make like original bricks for the rest of it. For now, I'm just going to do Control Shift and D to duplicate. But I can't, because Control Shift and D at the moment on Camtasia is to add notes. So I'm just going to come to duplicate here instead. Move this around, and I'm going to rotate and try and get a different kind of brick from this. Like that. I might just scale it down a little. Duplicate. Let's just oops, undo. Where have you gone? Ah, okay. Okay, insert. Okay, let's just hide you for now. Could we bring that in a moment? But yeah, okay, so we've got this. I want to Alt click, so then I can spin this around. Move this. Duplicate. So I want to move onto like the side as view, and if I just Alt and click, it'll also switch. And I want to make sure that I'm not at this point anyway sticking too far in or out. That's all right. I'm not worrying too much if they clash through. And Alt click, scale this down. So you can see, even just with one brick, you can actually get quite a lot from. So I'm just going to come through, maybe I'll take this one. Quite like the scale. Duplicate again. Something like that. Duplicate. I like having that flat edge. And essentially, yeah, just making a rock pile. You know, and you can also come in like this, because I quite like that there, but then this is in the way now. So I can come in and just grab my move brush and then customize these still. So just because I'm duplicating them, I can still come in and tweak and play and manipulate, which then makes them all that more unique as well. Just tighten up the gaps. Maybe go to the snake hook. Yeah, a little bit, oops, a little bit large. Grab and move topology. Bring that across. Okay, so you can start filling up the gaps by manipulating what you've already got, and then that also helps with the uniqueness. So we want to try as best we can to fill those gaps. Okay, let's continue, shall we? Duplicate. Come on, like so. Oops. Cancel. Don't know what I just hit. No, okay, that's why I hit delete. Duplicate. Why is the delete so close to duplicate? Squish and move or manipulate this around. Quite like that shape. Feels like it fits in quite nicely. So despite only having made one brick, I've managed to create a quite unique looking wall just from that one brick. Let's take you. And I may just take some of these and almost crash them through just to fill out some of those gaps. So I'm not fussed about that. The back of this, I'm just looking at the front. I do need to rotate it. There. Duplicate. There as well. So what I might do is just at this point I'm going to come to my back and maybe change the color so it's like a a red or something, so now I can see the gaps far easier. So if I've got that shortcut there, but it's under document and back there. So this is like kind of why I like it, having the shortcut for things like this. I can really sort of see. So I just want to manipulate, and I want to make sure I've got no gaps. And I might just duplicate you. Lay you in there. So we've got something along these lines. I might try and just come up. Bring that in a little. Although that's horribly stretched. Maybe a ridge like that. Okay, so if we look at this, I've got this kind of nice block just made from one cube, or one cube, sculpted into that one particular rock. Which I've manipulated, and obviously if you were to like make kind of 6 bricks, 10, however many unique bricks you want, you can obviously get more unique information. And like, for example, how I've sort of squished and squashed, like I would rather sculpt one that is flat and that kind of thing rather than having to squish and squash. But for this purpose, it's fine. So I've got this is going to be my like high poly. And we'll kind of work from there. Now I just want to get rid of this horrible red, bring it back to kind of this, and we've got our section of wall, which at the moment is 9.4 million, which isn't too crazy. There's worse, and we can, if I come into polygroup, so if I just hit my where are you? I want to group all of these together. So I'm going to select my subtool, and then I'm going to come in and go to merge and merge visible. Will do its thing. And now I've got this. So if I just select that, it will change, and I've got my merged visible. So it's just the one subtool. If I select this, you'll see that it's all there. If I come down, we can go to, where have you gone? Polygroups, and then hit auto group, and now you'll see that each particular thing has become its own polygroup, so it's easy to sort of to select and to kind of work from as well if we need to, and that's also really handy. You can, I won't go into polygroups now, but feel free to look into it. So I've got this, and we can basically take this out, and we can make a low poly of this ourselves from Zbrush, but I might take it in to Maya let's just have a look. What I might want to do is just, because I don't want to worry about the back because it's going to be really sort of high poly. So I'm going to come to the side view like so, and then I'm going to come in to trim rectangle, and it's shift and control, and I can draw out this or not, trim lasso. Multiple subdivision levels, that's why. Okay, so what I will do is I'll come to my subtool, I'm going to duplicate, hide one. Okay, so then I've got this one, and then I will come to my geometry here, and I'm going to delete lower subdivision level, so it's just one subdivision level. I'll come back to my rectangle trim. Let it do its thing, and then I cut that back off nice and flat. Make sure I've not got any holes. Yep, so I've cut too much off the back. Maybe we do it from the top. Ooh. Just going to crop that back so it just becomes easier. Or a little too much. Still got that tiny little gap. That was closer. I think. Crop this. There we go. So it just means it's on the back, it's just a little bit flatter, easier to sort of manage. Ah, now I've cut the front. There we go. So then the back's just a nice sort of flat plane. We'll just crop that off. And we could do the same on the sides, but I'm not going to because we actually don't want to do it on the sides. But we've got that there. So let's just turn this back. I prefer it to be all dark and grey and miserable. So we've got this there, and then there's a few things that we can do from here. So I'm going to export this out as a high poly first and do the traditional kind of method, or kind of the way I would do it. So just going to come into Z plugin. Actually, I will duplicate this again. Hide this one, so we've got different methods. Okay, so I'm going to go Z plugin. So if we look at the line, Z plugin, decimation master, and pre-process current. So that's just the one that I'm looking at in the screen. Okay, so that's done, just took about a minute. And then I'm going to come in and go to the plugin and then decimate here. I'm going to leave it just at default and go to decimate current. and you'll see it do its thing, and then you will see it dramatically reduce. Or we should see it dramatically reduce. So 1.5 million is this, 18 is with everything else, I think. Okay, so it's kept the detail, but reduced it, the polys down as much as possible. So this should be able to go into Maya for us to essentially retopologize. We can do it, make a low poly version in Zbrush, but let's just do this. I want to export this out first. Let's just go to desktop. And then wall HP. So I've sent that out. We can open that up in Maya in a moment. But if we're going to go and try and make this low poly inside Zbrush, then there's a few steps. So we want to make this like one mesh at the moment. It's multiple. You can see, you know, if we come in there, polygroups, auto group, you can see that it's all multiple things going on. So what I want to do is come in and essentially do Dynamesh, so geometry, and then if Dynamesh, and if we leave it, maybe crank it up 1024 and then hit Dynamesh, it will do its thing and it meshes it all together. It's not too bad, but there's a lot of issues with it. It's not particularly accurate. There's going to be a fair amount of cleanup. So I'm just going to undo that for now and look at another way we can activate Dynamesh. So what we can actually do instead is if I hit W, we get the gizmo up, and we've got the little gear icon there. I can come here and we've got this remesh by Dynamesh and remesh by Decimation. If I do remesh by Dynamesh, we get the little bounding box thing that comes up, and you can see, and we've got these like control cones, and this is like the poly count, like, so we can reduce the poly count and wait a minute and you can see it will do its thing. And at the moment you're going to have some issues. I want to just turn that off. This is the what's it called, reproject, and then on here drag this cone out, give it a few minutes. Sometimes this will crash, so the lower down I go, the lower the poly it will be, so that's like 5,000. If we bring this back up, I want to have high detail but all as one mesh, so that doesn't do too bad a job, but we're getting quite a few issues in there as well. But there's a little bit more control over this. That's not too bad. We can clean up a fair amount of that. Obviously the back is not of my concern. And that's looking pretty decent, and we'll be able to still work into this a little bit more. I just want to retain detail but have it as high poly, or as one mesh. So if we look in the poly frame, that's still all multiple meshes. That's because I haven't actually confirmed this yet. So if I go to my gear, I can then do accept, and then if I was to come down to my, where are you, polygroups, auto polygroup, it's just one mesh now. Okay, Okay, and now what I want to do is go to my gear again, and now this time I'm going to remesh by decimation. And then we've got all the controls again. And I think this white cone is our target poly count. So let's just say I want this to, let's just say about 8,000, and then we'll let it do its thing. Might take a while, sometimes it crashes. It's going relatively quick. There we go, didn't take too long. And now you can see it's all one mesh, but it's dramatically reduced that down, and it's generated quite a nice low poly for us to kind of work with and take out. So if I was to turn that off, you can see there's my low poly. You can maybe reduce it some more. So let's just see what happens if I try and bring this down to say 3,000. So I've done it already. $1,000. You know, so now that's like 1,000. We could, and then that's like physical geometry that would be the silhouette. Maybe that's too low, so might come in. Oops. Bring this back up. We still want some of that curvature. So maybe that'll do. And then we'll soften all these edges out as well. And we'll reduce it even more still. Okay, so I might just reduce that. No. Okay, I'm going to leave it like 2,000, I think, and then I'm going to hit the gear, and then just accept, and then I've got that, which is going to be my low poly attempt from here, so we can try and kind of customize and work with this to create a bit of a cleaner mesh, clean geometry, and see what we can produce. So I will come up and export, and come into my desktop where I saved the other one. P, and I'm going to come back into Maya. So I'm just going to come in and file a new scene, and import both of those. So I'm going to bring in the high poly first. There we go. So we've got the high poly in. And now I'm going to import low poly. So I've got the low poly there, so you can see it accurately occupies that space. So I'm just going to isolate just the low poly at the moment and come in and figure out what we need and what we don't. So for example, all of these back faces we don't necessarily need, and we're going to just figure out how we can sort of UV this as best as possible, which is not going to be easy, but Let's come into the side view. Just isolate them in all. I'm just going to hit frame for all. And then I'm just going to come in and select those faces. And then I'm going to deselect those. So then I've got that. So I can get rid of. So I'm looking at areas that I can completely delete. Because I just do not need any additional geometry in these areas. You know, without causing sort of holes and that kind of stuff. We can plug these back in anyway. So we've kind of got that flat back, and things like all of this towards the back we just don't need. So I'm just doing this bit of cleanup. But sometimes working this way is easier than just trying to completely retopologize from scratch. You know, we're not going to be using this back. So I'm going to try and trim it down as much as possible. So I'm just using the tab key just to come in and just start deleting these sort of areas. Obviously we want this. Oops. Bear with me. Let's just bring that back. Come through like areas like this, which is just a mess. Like here. And things like that, we can just, for now, fill the hole. So it's like all I feel like I could probably get rid of all of this as well. So I'm just going to come in, drag through those faces and just get rid. Oops. Get rid of all of you. All this as well. that particular hole can fill back up, but we don't need it to come all the way back out here. We can just rely on the bake, especially being underneath. We can close it off. Oh, there is a gap there, so we might need to leave that. And I think I want to get rid of all this. I don't think we necessarily need to fill that gap. Or we could delete there. And then I'm just going to grab that, merge that down, and bridge. And then I might just weld that off here and there. So all of that doesn't necessarily, that's just a lot of unnecessary geometry in there that we're never going to see. So I do want to clean this up. Pardon me, sorry. So let's get rid of all of that. Maybe that as well. Let's just weld these in. And I'm just gonna weld this up. And the normal map should pick up a lot of that. So just fill hole. So we just clean that up a bit. There's going to be a load of areas that we can do kind of that. Like for example here. where it comes into this hole. Let's get rid of that. Come around. Delete that, and then we can just plug in that hole. But we don't need any of this. So it's just, this is one method which I don't use very often, if I'm perfectly honest. But it's perfectly valid. Just manually coming in and reducing this. And sometimes this will be easier than trying to figure out and remodel it all. Because you've already got the detail in place. Now just trying to strip down as much as I can possibly strip. Most of it is from the back. And again, if you spent a little bit more time in Zbrush tidying up the back in the first place and making it straighter, like, then you wouldn't really have this issue in the first place. But here we are. So I think I can actually get rid of not necessarily from there, but definitely I think from here. Let's get all of this to do just want to keep coming around to the front just to make sure I'm not getting rid of anything important. And like things like that, now we can just plug that hole in. And let the normal map just kind of capture it. To you, and then I can probably grab this vert, weld you back in there, and fill that hole. So this here got a lot of stuff. Going on at the minute, so just going to grab that. We could use the append polygon tool, but for now I'm just going to extrude because it's just easy enough and quick enough. Just got to make sure I merge both those down. Bridge across. And just going to fill that in, so I'm just thinking in triangles at the moment. That into there, and maybe that to there, but then I'm going to need to cut because it's across there. And I can fill that hole. And see how the face is all kind of warped? That's why we need to make sure it's cut into the triangles so it actually fulfills that. So that is like that, although I feel like that shouldn't be there. And actually, so this is where I've lost my high poly, but hey, I'm just going to bridge. I've lost too much of the original. Right to there. I think that's better that way around. Yes. Okay, so it's just problem solving really, like that, and figuring out what we can lose, what we can't. Is it the most optimal way of doing it? Probably not. Doing it manually probably would, because then you got complete control. But this, wow, you can decide whether it's quicker or not. Depends how often you do it. So don't need any of this. A lot of mess here as well. So sometimes it's easier if I just select a face, hit F, rotate and round so I can see. Just draw a box over it and then just delete it all like that. And then I can just fill hole and cut across. Yep, I can go. those two. There's a lot of stuff going on here that maybe can be rid of. Okay, so here again, definitely want to get rid of all that mess. And that. So there's just a load of unnecessary geo that we can come in and clean. I'm just going to close it up by welding. And that should be alright. Because it's not like a high detail area that's going to need a lot. You could probably close it off. There. That'll do. Okay, so we've got this hole as well. We've created. We certainly don't want, like, it's like this area is here. It's just like really dense with geometry. And look at all that, which we just do not want. So let's just start chipping away all this. I think we could probably get rid of all this as well. There we go. Then close up wherever possible. Yeah, that is just a mess. So I'm just trying to get to an angle where I can just draw a box over it without selecting any of the other faces. So I can just get rid of the lot like that. Makes it a bit easier for myself. I'm just going to extrude out, grab those two verts and weld those to there. I'm going to do the same with this. Weld to there. Now I'm just going to try and use what I've already got to close that gap. Same with this. Nope. Fill. Fill hole, and I'm just going to multi-cut. Come in there. So I feel like we may be getting there almost. These little fellas can go. Oops. Get rid of you. Fill that hole. I can't see any major glaring issues beyond the actual hole mesh. Cut that across. Okay. So let's see where we go with that. So that is 1151, so that's not too bad. I'll select those edges, and I'm just going to make everything soft for now. So I've got this lovely mess. And then if we come into my UV, I'm just going to come in and do UV toolkit, create, and that should do a planar one for now. Right click. Follow along the U and follow along the V. So basically got that. There's going to be some stretching. Let's just hide the high poly for now. So as you can see, there's a fair amount of stretching, which isn't good. So what we can do is start to try and separate these into UV islands where the kind of bricks would be as best we can. So if you come in and just take this, deselect, and so then that is kind of like one, and then I'm going to create UV shell, and then that gets cut out. So So I'm just going to start by selecting kind of central pieces, and then I'm using the shift and grow selection, which is the greater than, or the full stop key, till I get to somewhere like there. And then I can drag select and drag deselect the areas that I want. I don't want those, it'll just hide the grid. Something like that. And then like what I can do now is things like if I just go to face, drag select that selection here, and then just come in, and then I can hold down and control and deselect there, so then I've just got that area, so it becomes easier as I go along. Create UV shell, move that across. Maybe grab this section here. I'm just doing shift and control to drag select to include those faces. There's another way of selection. Then tab to deselect those. Yeah, let's just include that in there as well, why not? I'm not being too careful with this, I just want to get a rough. So I'm just going to kind of grab those ones, and I'm just going to control, deselect those. Or just drag those, to be fair. Then control, deselect, deselect, deselect. Come in and grab some of those. Just turn that down a bit so I can see a bit clearer. So yeah, it just becomes a bit. So then if we go to faces here, I can just sort of maybe select those top faces. Try and find a sort of a natural cut. And I feel like these faces here could probably be their own shell. So you can see it starts to become a bit easier. So now I've got those, I can just come through. Maybe I'll just do an automatic unfold again. And then let's go to transform and set, so then they're all the same textile density. Okay, this little piece needs to live somewhere. So that's that edge, so I'm going to move insert it back on there. And areas like this, I want to come in and figure out what's going on. So I've got this mess. Okay, so we definitely want to delete that. And then just fill the hole. So UVing as well will also help identify areas of problem. So now the UV's on there, there's still some stretching, but it's getting better. So I'm going to leave it there for now. I'm just going to come in and go to arrange and layout and just hit layout, pack that all in. Now the issue is at the moment with this is if I go and get, it is lower textile density than I wanted. So you can try and customize and play around with that, but for now it's okay. Got a little hole in here, or have I? No, it's just the face. That's the one that I've just added. So I just want to make sure that's soft edge. So we've got that there. Right, so there may be some bake issues because some of these edges should probably be hard, but we're going to leave it there for now. So this is my wool low poly. Okay, it's not letting me rename, so that's fine. File, export selection. And FBX wool underscore LP. Let's go for high poly so we can see it should occupy pretty much the same space, which is great. I shouldn't actually need to re-export this, to be fair, because I haven't changed it, but I just want to make sure it's in the same, occupies the same space. Okay, so with that in mind, hang on, let's just close Zbrush down for a minute. Don't need that for the time being. Open up Marmoset toolbag. 1 second. Okay, so we've got Marmoset here. So let's just open up our Zbrush wool FBX high poly and low poly. Bring these in. Okay, then I'm going to open up my baker. Low poly and high. check my cage, which should be absolutely fine. I can probably reduce the offset a little. It's going to ask me for a path, that's fine. Let's just create a new folder, bakes. I'm going to come to my project and just hit preview. Not too bad, I think that's clipping through, so maybe turn the high poly on, come back to our low, yeah, so increase that a little bit. That's better. So it's baking quite nicely. I think I'm too concerned about. That'll do for now, so you can see the back. Okay, so I will come up and change this to 64. I'm going to up it to 4K. I can always reduce that in engine. And I'm just going to do normals for now. Might do ambient occlusion as well. I'll just do that. I'll bake the rest inside Painter. So do that. Just hit my preview again. So then we got coming through, which is looking nice. Cool. So let's open up Substance Painter. Move that over. Clues, file, new, PBR, select my low poly, FBX. I'm going to work in 2K, make this OpenGL, compute tangent space normal. I'm going to bring in my maps. So I'll bring in both. I'm going to bake another ambient occlusion and then hit color manager. Oh, didn't realize this. No, never mind. So what I want to do is just go to talk, if I can talk, is come down and where are you? Turn this to Tomoko, so we've got nice even lighting. Activate post process. Change that to log, and then activate color profile. ASUS Unreal Engine, so we get clean lighting to what we're going to expect. Next, what I'm going to do is come to my material or textures, open up my normal map. So then that is applied. And then I may want to bring in the ambient occlusion as well. It's a bit of an issue there. So I'm just going to bake a new ambient occlusion. 2K, up the anti-alias, turn off normal, don't need that, don't need ID map either. I'm going to leave everything else and just hit bake. So the ambient occlusion is a bit of an issue, but I'm not going to worry about it now. I'm not going to go heavy in the texturing, I'm just going to throw some base stuff on. Let's just throw a concrete kind of thing on. Maybe that's a little big, so increase the scale. .5, something like that, maybe. Maybe just throw so this on. What I might do with this is just what do I want to do with this? not giving me any options. So let's just delete you. Let's just add a fill color. Let's get some sort of brown. Kind of muddish type, or whatever. I'm going to add a black mask, and let's just see what smart masks I can find. Sand gives me something, get those sort of crevices. Come into our mask editor. Start mucking around with this. I don't want to worry about that. So just trying to get a little bit of variation. Let's just add in a new fill layer. Black mask. Let's try and find some of those edges. A little bit of blur. Really kind of pull that out. Maybe just lower the opacity slightly on that. So it's just getting the kind of wear on those edges somewhat. And then let's get that kind of wet, watery type thing on the go. So let's just add another layer. I'm gonna get this quite kind of darkish, whatever, and then I'm gonna use whisk ground. There's one somewhere. Dirt ground. Drop that on. Actually, that's not what I want. What I want is kind of more world space. So I'm going to come in, add a black mask, right click, and then I'm going to add mask by color, but then I'm not going to have an ID mask. I'm going to use world space instead. Or actually, let's just make it easy on myself. Going to add a paint layer and then manually just come in and paint out some of this bottom, as though it's kind of change the brush, crystal or something. Try and get some sort of watermark on there. Just X to invert, and then just sort of paint some of that back. And then on this particular one, I'm going to turn the roughness down, so then it looks wet. So we've got that. So that'll do. It's not too bad. So with that done, I'm going to export my maps. So File, Export Textures. And then at the minute it's just Lambert 1 because that's the material. So I'm just going to come in to here where it's got name and Rocks 01 or Rocks A. Because if I make iterations, it will be 01, 02, and that kind of thing. So then File, Export Textures. I want to make sure I'm putting it where I need it. In here, Textures. Select that folder. I'm going to change to my custom Unreal Engine 4. Which should also have actually CMP export. I want, yeah, CMP Unreal Engine 4, it's got the height as well. So I want to bring out the height with this too. And then I'm going to do this at 4K, save my settings, export textures, and then export. Wrong ones. That one. That's weird. Why did it not save that? Because I want the height as well. There we go. So I got those. So I'm just going to, I'll save this. Okay, so that's that done. So let's close that down. I'm going to close the bake down too. And then I'm going to open up Unreal. No, I'm not. I want to come back into Maya first. So I'm just going to hide the high poly. Because now I've got this. I'm going to just come in and apply my blend. For no other reason than just to get the color on it. Just for some visualization. Desktop. Zbrush wall. Textures. Color. Okay, so now I've got this in. And yeah, let's throw the normal map on as well. Tangent space normals. Normal, and then make sure that's set to raw if I'm using it inside engine. So okay, we've got this, and that's our kind of low poly. It's only, 1,000 tries, which isn't too bad at all for something as dense as this. Okay, but then this is just going to work much nicer for our wall. So now what I want to do is, remember, it's like 5 over. Now I'm not going to be too fussed. I'm going to crash that through. I'm not too bothered because it's rocks. It kind of works. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I've got that. I can take this and I'm going to combine it. Then I'm going to come in, deform, non-linear, bend. Rotate it that way and that way. And then come up to my attributes and do my curvature. And then I'll just need to adjust that, so maybe 81. 2, 3. I'm going to close that gap off. 4. There's a tiny little hole there, but that should be alright. So now I've got this, and the repetition is, not as noticeable because it's a cylinder. you know, you can just about see the same brick, but it's all right. And then I'm just going to delete my history, freeze transformations, center my pivot, move it to the center of the world. Like so. Now if I come back in here, bring that down, and then if I snap, let's just move that up ever so slightly and snap that down so then it kind of crashes through the floor, which is fine. And then we've got that slight overlap again, which is fine. So if I was to duplicate this, and then I'm going to snap that to the grid, and it will crash through and fill out all those kind of gaps and holes. But then in this instance as well, what I'm going to do is just shrink that down. And then I might, as I shrank that down, but I might just push that up so then it's on that 150. So I'm kind of still working to the grid, but you can be a little bit looser. And then I can move that up and snap that to the grid, and then I can just rotate that a little to offset. And then I could also flip it. Although the texturing there kind of ruins it, and so this is where you kind of see the pitfalls of the way that I've textured that with the wet here. That's being mirrored up, so I would do it separately. I would have it just plain and then add that wet afterwards inside engine, but you get the principle of it. And then if I was to do this section for real, I would have this as a 4 meter. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So it would be in effect that high. 1, 2, 3, even more. So it would be a much larger place. So then it's not as, the repetition isn't. So that's just that bottom trim. So we've got that in there. So I'm going to leave that out for now, because that looks pretty nice. And let's open up engine, shall we? Let's open up this one, let's test. Yeah, so you can see now we've got the silhouette, which I think is really important with this particular project. So while that's opening, let's just minimize that for the moment. Here we go. Ooh, let's just, okay, so that's that. So let's just go to File, a new level. Basic. Ooh. This is new. They've updated it again since okay, so not open world, basic, is that what I chose? It is. Okay, fine, we'll go with it. So let's just open up this, drag in my wall low poly and import. Nope, that's not what I want. I want to export my rounded one, this one. So File, Export Selection, and then this will be my pillar, wall, A. And the good thing as well with doing it like this is that it's already triangulated. So when it bakes, if it's pre-triangulated, when it bakes, it's just better. So anyway, let's just come back in and bring in our pillar wall A. Let's just go through, generate collision, build nanite. I want to turn nanite on for this. This is just a relation 5, so just make it look nice. Combine meshes, why not? Let's turn that on. Yep, all good, all good. Don't want to bring in materials, going to make my own, and then just import all. Okay. And then I will create another folder. Just to keep myself a little bit more organized than what I have been working on this particular one. And bring in textures. Okay. And then what I need to make sure I do when I come in, I've got 2 normal maps. That's the one I want. Is just make sure I flip my green channel. So I can just come in here and type in green, flip green channel. Yes, so now it is DirectX suitable for Unreal. Other things I want to do is my RMA. I've got 2 of each. Interesting. So my packed. Oh, because yeah, I know why. Because I did it on the 2 things, one with the height and one without. So now I've got this one. I need to make sure that this is set to masks no sRGB, because otherwise it tries to compress and reduces quality. And then the grayscale, the height, should be grayscale. That's fine. So that's all ready to go. So next thing I need to do is create a new material, basically, or come in. I've got my master material here. I think it's already got parameters. So I've got my color input, normal input, and RMA input. I've also got a height input there, which is for something else, for the parallax occlusion mapping. So we will close that for a moment, and I'm going to create a material instance, and this is going to be my material instance, and this will be my pillar wall A. Open this up, and now we can see what we've got. So I can add in different color. So this is my, okay, what's it called? So color, wall, LP, albedo, and color. So let's just take that, and then if I do that, it should, don't know why it won't do it, but it should select, because I've got that selected. Hitting that should do it, but it's not. So LP wall color, normal map, LP wall normal, RMA, LP wall RMA packed, and then I think I am going to bring in LP height. Although I think I can just turn that off for now. That's just adding a bit of whatever to it. So if I just hit save, close that, come back out to my textures, open up my pillar, and now I can go and open up my material instance, pillar wall A, and then that's applied. Drag this out, zero it off. And sit that there. So at the moment as well, you can see how the light just shines through it. That's because basically there's no back face to it, but it would be okay if this is a completely closed mesh, which it would be, you know, once the roof is on top as well. So you can see how it fits. There is that little hole there, which, you know, you do notice, but it's not too bad. So that is the process that I would probably go with to create this. I think it works really nicely. We could also, for sort of the flat walls, so let's just duplicate this up and make this just repetitive for now. Let's bring in this 400 by 400 plane. That's really small. So say we've got this, and that's going to kind of come in and then I'm going to just duplicate this and move this along, move this up. So we've got this sort of flat wall that's kind of coming off it. Move that along as well. Now let's just say we've got this piece. Let's just browse to asset and open this up. I'm going to assign my MILP. Pillar, was it? Pillar wall A. So I'm going to assign the pillar wall A to it, like this. Oh, actually, I know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to assign pillar wall A. That's because it's not tileable. That's why. I'd want to make a tileable texture, so which I have got, I think. Let me just pause for a minute and I'll come back with the tileable. Okay, so I've got a really basic stone wall. It's nothing fancy. No. So what I want to do is just come back and I want to create another instance of the master material. And this will be my material instance wall. I don't know, B. And then open this up. And then this is going to be my stone wall. So let's just turn on my color, normal, and RMA. Stone wall color. Stone wall normal. Stone wall RMA, turn the height on, and then we've got stone wall height A. So what we can do with this is we've got this here. If I turn on my height ratio, we should be able to crank this up a little bit, but let's just save that. I'm going to move this over to the side. And let's just see how well this tiles. Browse to asset, open that up. MI stone wall. Tiles horribly, but there it is, and it's textured horribly as well. Is that actually the right one? What did I just create? Stone wall. It was wall B, wasn't it? Yeah. So it's going slow, maybe because I've got everything open. So okay, so I don't want you, I want you. MI stone wall B, that's the one I want. Marginally better. Not a lot. Let's just close Photoshop. I'm going to close Maya. So we've got this really horrible looking stone wall, but you can imagine if we've done it to the same kind of level of that, as the same principle. And what we've got is we've also got now our height. So if I just come in here, stone wall, or just wall B, let's just move this in, and we've got the height ratio. We can perhaps just start pushing that a little bit to try and give the illusion that there's actually some parallax occlusions. When you get in, you see how that's stepping up. So we might want to just increase the steps here, like to 100. Give it a minute. And then that's a little bit better. But the more steps we have, the more expensive this is. So you can see there's less kind of stepping now. But if I'm standing here, that wall looks as though it's three-dimensional. So it's got all that kind of lovely lumpy bumpy stuff. Looking at it straight on, not as nice as that, obviously, the 3D geometry, but you can get away with it. So if you're a player, you're running down the side of this, kind of is actually not too bad. So let's just hit play. Let's get a third person in. So you can see the parallax occlusion is giving that illusion of 3D geometry, but it doesn't actually affect the silhouette. So as soon as you get to that edge, you know, there's nothing there. So you can do it. There are going to be some issues where you'll see that kind of stepping. If we look on the right on the edge of the screen, you can see that kind of layers, you know, because we've got those 200 layers, which is basically stacking it all up. But it can give you a nice effect. You can see just the very faint of where it's pushing it back from. So there are some issues with it, but it can be often a cheaper way of faking the 3D kind of geometry wall against these huge large rocks that to actually physically make. So if you got, for example, if we made this, and now you can obviously see the clear holes that we've got in there as well, as we kind of run around. So it's potentially a mix of creating physical geometry and a mix of using POM, parallax occlusion mapping. If that was the same texture of that, it would obviously look nicer. That's just like a test material to see it working. So you can do that, or we can potentially even use displacement to pull that physically out, but then you'd need a higher mesh anyway, that you may as well just use something like this. But 2 hours, 14 minutes, 15 minutes, that will do for now.